Blessings on this Tuesday night. Tuesday night is the night we answer the questions that have been sent in. There's a few. So, first question tonight. If a Sangha member has a good Kalyana metta that is not the monastery's main teacher, i.e. attendance at the sessions is not compulsory, how often would you recommend they go to this person's talks? Not sure there's a simple answer here. This sounds like a question from a monastic, monk or nun, so if you're living in a monastic community, there's always a few different things to bear in mind. What are the rules of training and practice in the monastery you live in? Like you say, sometimes in monasteries we have compulsory activities, maybe chores and going on Vindabhata or attending meditation sessions, chanting, attending Dhamma teaching sessions, and so on. And then some activities are not compulsory, they're just voluntary. One of the roles in Buddhist monasticism is senior monks and nuns, they give teaching to the junior ones, show kindness, compassion, give words of advice, support, share skills. We teach each other. The senior monks teach the junior monks how to sew, how to wear their robes, how to chant, how to do various skills. It's part of the way a Buddhist monastic community works. We share, we help, we share information, we encourage each other in different ways. And obviously teaching, being a mentor, guide, is part of that. And if it's a larger monastic community, well, there may be several monks in a role of seniority, or nuns, and there may not just be the one teacher, solo teacher, but there may be a number of monastics who have something to offer or to share, knowledge of the texts, knowledge of meditation, knowledge in the rules of training, the Vinaya, and we share. That's part of our tradition. We serve the community, so sometimes our sharing is a form of service for the wider community, and we help individuals. So you have to see what's appropriate in your situation as far as seeking out Kalyana Mitta for advice. Sometimes we benefit from one-on-one interviews and discussions. Sometimes we benefit from general teachings, talks. Benefit from things like this, a Q&A session. Sometimes you listen to someone else's question, and that may be a question you've had yourself, and you listen to the answer. It may help you, even though it is you weren't the one asking the question. Many monastics, they sit and listen without asking questions, but they pick up the Dhamma by listening. Many monastics look and learn just being observant around them. It's part of our tradition. You learn through the training, living in the monastery, getting the examples of fellow monastics, but also just observing yourself, observing others. And it's an environment that's suitable for that. So in terms of how often you should go to a particular monk or nun that you find is helpful for your teaching. Well, you just have to see what's appropriate, I think. Our aim is not to be totally dependent on the teacher, it's to gain Dhamma teachings from the teacher and then go off and practice with what we've heard and learn from ourselves through our own practice. This is how the Buddha taught. This is how Venerable Sariputta answered the Buddha when the Buddha asked him whether do you believe what I teach? And he said, well, I do if it's in line with what I've found from my own practice. And the Buddha said, that's correct. We have to verify what we listen from teachers, what we gain, the knowledge we gain, the information we gain from teachers. We have to go off and practice with it and verify it for ourselves. Teachers are not teaching us to cling to them. They're giving us the skills and knowledge and the encouragement so we can go off and find out for ourselves. Especially in the beginning, we do rely on teachers because we don't know how to practice. Well, we listen, get those words of guidance. But over time, the longer we are in the robes, or just as a Buddhist in general, the longer you're practicing the Buddhist teachings, the idea is that you develop some stability, continuity, and understanding that you can rely on yourself. So you understand how to practice even though you still have mental defilements arising, you get caught into wrong views, you still suffer from greed, anger and delusion, and these come up. The idea is you aim to be able to practice in all situations for yourself, because you won't always have the teacher physically with you. You may only need to, or may only have access to the teacher occasionally. In the old days, before modern transport, cars and vehicles were around, monks had to walk to visit their teacher. Maybe they didn't live with their teacher, but they'd walk. The first time I went to see Ajahn Chah, I had to walk 8 kilometers from Wat Nana Chat to Wat Bapong where he lived. In those days you walked sometimes. There was no monastery car, no one had a car to offer you a lift, you just walked places. And that was quite common. And so I know monks who have walked for 3 days and 3 nights to go and see a teacher, or 7 days and 7 nights to go and see a teacher, to ask their questions, receive teachings, and then they walk back again. You hope that they got a good answer for their question. If you walk a week to get your chance to ask your question, you're really going to want to ask the right question, and you're going to have to value that answer. Sometimes you visited teachers. In my day, when I was a young monk, you'd visit a teacher, and some days the teacher wasn't there. You travel across the countryside. Sometimes it would be in a vehicle, but you can travel 12 hours in the back of a pickup truck to visit a teacher, and you get there all excited, waiting to ask your question about meditation and have your breakthrough, having received your special teaching from the teacher. But then you arrive at the monastery and they're out. You missed your chance. Maybe you have to wait another year before you get to see that teacher again. So patience is very important as well. When you're receiving teachings, seeking out teachings, be patient. And when you're patient, sometimes you answer your question yourself through your own practice. I can remember going to see Lungta Mahabua with the entire Wat Bapong Sangha, about 300 monks, in many bus loads and vehicle loads. Went to see him, and he was too ill to receive us, so he didn't come out, and so not a word was said. The whole Sangha sat there, waiting patiently. He didn't come out. And everyone, after an hour or so, everyone left. And I asked one senior monk, said, "Oh, shame we didn't see Longta Mahabua today, we didn't receive a teaching." He said, "Well, we're used to that because Lumpur Cha, the last few years of his life, was ill and he stopped teaching. So monks would regularly go to see Lumpur Cha and sit with him, but not actually receive any words of teaching, but they may still receive teaching in terms of the being in the presence of a very wise and peaceful person. The more subtle teachings of the presence of the teacher, the environment, the place, rather than words. So we were used to that with Ajahn Chah. So when Ajahn Mahabua was too ill to come out and receive all the monks, then the view was, well, we're used to not getting a teaching from Ajahn Chah, now we can be used to not getting a verbal teaching from Ajahn Mahabua. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The bus driver didn't lose, he still got his salary for driving everyone there. It's a 5-hour drive from Wat Bapong to Wat Babanta, where Lungta used to live. 5 hours there, 5 hours back. So the bus driver was happy, but no one got the teaching. Next question. Does craving make you suffer now or in the future? Both. Craving is the cause of suffering, whether it's now or in the future. As craving arises now, you won't be peaceful, will you? Because of craving. It disturbs the mind. It makes you think, makes you feel, it feeds emotions. What is craving? Craving for sensuality, the objects of the senses. So that's wanting. Craving is wanting. And it's, not coming from a place of wisdom and understanding or a place of peace and understanding. It's disturbing to the mind. So when you want things, which we do all the time, we're not peaceful. Why in meditation do you feel peaceful? It's because at that moment you stop wanting. So if you're practicing anapanasati and you focus your mind on the breath, you're consciously letting go of wanting. You're saying, I don't need food, I don't need to see things, feel things, I don't need stimulation, I don't need to talk, look at a computer, listen to music, I don't need entertainment, I don't need anything, I'm just turning my attention to the breath, say. And when you're successful in that, you've given up the wanting for sense objects, your attention has gone inside, using the breath as an object of meditation. So you can get a taste of the mind free from craving at that moment, and it's peaceful. Then when you emerge out of that peace, craving will come back, of course, and you can see it for what it is. Oh, it disturbs the mind. And because craving keeps coming up, we keep wanting things, not seeing that they're impermanent, they're suffering, they're not self. When there's no mindfulness and wisdom, we follow craving, it keeps coming up and it reinforces, so the likelihood of it coming up again is increased. Every time you give in to craving, that will be a cause for craving to return, and again, and again, and again. So it can reinforce, get stronger, come up more often. And that continues to the end of your life, so then it also is, as we just chanted in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, it's the cause for birth, becoming and birth. Your next birth is founded on craving, wanting. The arahant doesn't want anything anymore. They have no more craving. They're tired of craving because it's disturbing in its nature. They've seen that, and if you see something as disturbing, you let it go. So the arahant has let go of all craving. They've relinquished, given it up, because they see it as a cause of suffering. That giving up has to start with the practice in the here and now, right here, right now. You notice craving, it's arisen in your mind, but if you have enough mindfulness and insight, you say, let it go, let it be. You drop it. So sometimes the Buddha would compare craving to fire. It burns you. If you're getting burnt, or you pull your hand away, or you remove the fire from your body if you're getting burnt. You remove craving from your mind because it's burning you, it's heating you up. Literally you feel hot, don't you, with craving. Sensual craving, the strongest kind of craving is sexual desire, but it's not the only kind of desire. We have all kinds of ambitions and cravings for power, for all kinds of things, influence, reputation and so on. Different kinds of craving. And that's just sensual craving. We've also got bhavadanha, craving to become. You want to be somebody or something, you want a certain experience, you want to own the world, rule the world, because that's where craving takes you, doesn't it? I want to be the richest, most powerful person in the world, and then when you're not satisfied with the world, because craving doesn't lead to satisfaction, it leads to more craving and more disturbance. You want to go out of this world. So now everyone with money is building spaceships, and they want to, not only do they want to own the world, they want to own Mars and the moon as well. And there's no end to it. If you could, they'd own the whole universe. Because that's what craving does to your mind. Keeps you wanting, and wanting bigger, better, more. Whether it's craving to become somebody of influence, make your mark on the world, on history, or just an immediate sense object. I want this taste, this sight, this smell, this touch. Either way, it's a wanting that's not satisfied, never satisfied. It's also translated as thirst or hunger. It's like endless hunger. If it's craving for food, well, often you eat more than you need to. You eat when you don't need to because you've already eaten, but you still want more. Craving is like that, isn't it? It's endless thirst, hunger. So it disturbs you in the present, but it's also having a knock-on effect right through to the end of your life, so it also will be causing suffering for the future as well. Lose, lose. Lose in the present, lose in the future. The last kind of craving is vibhavadanha, craving not to become, which we experience all the time because we don't always get what we want. We have ambition, we want to be somebody and we don't get it, we get what we don't want. So you want to win and you lose. You want to be successful but you're failing. You want to be healthy but you're ill. You want to be alive but you're facing old age, sickness and death. There's all kinds of craving not to become going on in life. We're often not satisfied, not content with where we're at in our life, who we are, who we feel we are, who we think we are, or maybe what other people think about us. So whether it's craving for things, wanting things, or wanting to get rid of experiences we don't like, it's endless. And that's the problem with craving, it's endless. As long as you follow it, you're endlessly disturbed. Disturbs you right here and now because it moves your mind into negative emotions, defilements. And it's going to result in suffering in the future as well. So you suffer both ways. So why was the Buddha the most peaceful, happy person in the world? Because he abandoned craving. He saw craving as the cause of suffering and then relinquished it. And it's the path of practice Noble Eightfold Path, which is the mechanism for relinquishing craving. It helps you to see craving, exposes it, and then gives you the tools to let it go. So we have sila. When you practice moral restraint of your speech, your actions, you may have craving arise in your mind, but you undertake precepts. That means you're undertaking not to put craving into your speech or action, so then it's left just as a mental thing. So if you can develop sila, already brings you a lot of happiness, because you're avoiding the bad karma of following craving and hurting other people, hurting yourself. Then you work on the mental craving, and that's why we meditate. We cultivate mindfulness, insight into craving, seeing craving for what it is, and the sharpness of mind and the cleverness of mind to recognize this is something to be abandoned, not to be followed. Craving is very subtle, so it can hide in there, in the midst of what we think is right. There may be actually something that's wrong, wrong thinking, wrong views mixed in with what we think is right. So we have to keep observing, investigating to find out where craving is lurking. Sometimes it's really hidden, sometimes it's very obvious, but once we've established sila, then we can develop samadhi, which brings this calmness, continuity of mindfulness, steadiness of mind, brightens the mind, so that you can look back at your experience, and wisdom arises when we're seeing craving as craving and abandoning it. There's many things, more things we could talk about, but in brief, craving makes you suffer now and in the future. It's bad, bad, bad. But you just have to be very patient with the fact that it's deeply rooted, so you're gradually uprooting it. Just like weeding a garden, you weed it once and some of the weeds won't return, but some will. And some are deeper down in the earth, and you have to keep at it maybe for a long time before you finally clean them out. Craving is like that. Next question. Ajahn, how to practice right speech when you have to tell someone something that is difficult for them to hear? Well, you practice right speech. That's the point. Right speech, not lying, not abusing, not using harsh speech, not dividing people, setting people apart, causing disharmony, and not speaking idle chatter. If you have to tell something to somebody that is difficult to hear, the Buddha said when you have to admonish or give feedback to people, number one, you speak the truth. You have to establish your mind in the truth. You're speaking what you know, what you've seen, what you've understood, as opposed to hearsay or gossip that may or may not be true. You have to speak the truth. You have to speak from a place of kindness, well-wishing. You want this person to improve, develop in a good way, be happier. So maybe you know that they've got a fault or made a mistake. You want them to learn, and you're trying to help them to learn. But because everyone has their attachment to their self, what we call ego, they have their self, their conceit, it's not easy to experience feedback from others, even when it's true, even when it's well-intentioned. So you also have to pick the right words, phrase it well. You have to pick the right time, because sometimes we speak the truth but at the wrong time or the wrong place. When people are tired and very busy, maybe they're not in the best way to receive feedback. So that's not the right time to say those words, or you have to pick a time when they're more relaxed, less pressure, then you may get a better response. That means you have to be patient yourself. And if you're coming from a place of kindness, then you'll be patient. You notice when you're angry, you want to tell someone off, then you're not going to be patient. So patience and kindness go together. That's why you have to ground your mind in kindness. But you also have to speak that which is beneficial, really beneficial, useful for that person. If that's what you have to do, you have to tell them something, or you have to say that which is beneficial. You notice the Buddha himself, he wouldn't always tell people something that was true, but he decided it's not going to help them because they're not ready to hear it. Maybe it would make them angry. Even the truth can be disagreeable sometimes to people, and if they're just going to get angry, then they're going to turn off. They won't respond well to these words. So sometimes the Buddha himself, he wouldn't say anything, he'd be silent. And then other monks would come along and say, why didn't you tell them, this home truth that they needed to hear, or explain something about their life that they needed to hear? Maybe the Buddha said, it's not the right time. Perhaps he could see that person wouldn't be receptive, they get angry, upset, turn against him. So that's why you have to consider these different aspects of how to tell something to somebody that's difficult. There must be some things in life, it's always going to be difficult. There'll never really be a perfect time. If you have to tell someone their loved one has just passed away or something, it's always going to be painful, I think. There may not be the ideal time, but sometimes there is a better time than, there are some times that are better, sometimes are worse. You wait. If someone has to concentrate on something very important, maybe you wait until they've finished before you tell them the bad news, or even the good news. Sometimes, you think about it, out of compassion, you think it through, when is the best time. And then whether they really need to hear this or not. Some things you can wait, some things you can leave, other times you can't. Depends on how important it is. There was that story, they said the Women's Soccer World Cup, the captain of the winning team of Spain, her father died the night before the match, but they didn't tell her because they didn't want to put her off playing the match. And she won the match by scoring the goal for the team. And they told her afterwards. I don't know the person and I don't know the situation, but that's what the news said. So sometimes there's a truth to be told, but you wait for the right time. Next question. How can you become a wise person? I was mentioning this to someone earlier. Just become a monk or a nun, and don't disrobe and stay a monk or a nun for the rest of your life, and you'll become very wise. I guarantee it. That is one guaranteed way to become wise. Not always easy, not everyone can do it, but if you can, just become a monk or a nun and just keep practicing, follow the rules, do the practices, and you'll be wiser and wiser and wiser. Last night I had a meeting with all the abbots from Ajahn Chah's monasteries, online Zoom meeting, and monks who have been in the robes for 30, 40, 50 years, they just naturally become wise, compassionate people. Maybe people are not yet fully enlightened or perfect, you don't know, but they definitely are wiser and more compassionate when they started. That's the benefit of the practice. And the same for lay Buddhists, although lay life is a little bit more uncertain, isn't it? Because we get led astray, sometimes we give up the practice, or we get led astray, or our defilements get the better of us. There's probably more risk there, but there's still plenty of lay Buddhists who become wise through practicing these teachings over the years. So whether you're a lay person or a monastic, just keep going, don't give up, and you'll become wiser and wiser. Keeping precepts makes you wise, because it makes you very aware of wholesome and unwholesome karma, the consequences of actions, brings up this sense of shame and awareness of the consequences of actions. And that's wisdom that can be life-saving. You stop you doing something or saying something really harmful or stupid, and that will come back on you. So precepts make you wise. Morality doesn't get a very good press these days. People say, oh, morality, very old-fashioned. It makes you wise, it makes you careful, keeps you out of trouble, stops you creating suffering for yourself and others by keeping precepts. The whole world would become a much wiser place if everyone kept the 5 precepts. Practicing meditation makes you wiser, because you see your own mind more closely, you see it more clearly, you're observing yourself more closely, you get to know your habits, how you think, how you make decisions, what your intentions are, what your views and attitudes are. You see them as you practice more meditation. Then you can start shedding, letting go of the bad stuff and keeping the good stuff. That's what wisdom is, isn't it? Wisdom is helping, is that knowledge that keeps you out of suffering, prevents suffering, or helps you to overcome suffering if it's arisen. Meditation will make you wiser and cleverer. And we see that with particularly all the forest masters from northeast Thailand, who often had very little worldly education, hadn't read much, hadn't heard much, but because they practiced the Buddhist teachings, kept precepts, practiced mindfulness, investigated the Dhamma through their own experience, became very, very wise. Wiser than many people who have got degrees and all kinds of knowledge and skills in the world, which is I'm not belittling that, but the wisest people I've ever met have often not been that well educated or well read, but they've investigated the truth through their own body and mind. They understand what is suffering, what is its cause, and how to make suffering disappear from their experience, their life. And that's wisdom. There's no point just knowing a lot of stuff, being able to go on a quiz show and answer every question if you're still suffering with all the suffering humans can have, discontent, depression, anxiety, worry, fear, all the unhappiness of life. If you're still experiencing that, the knowledge you have is not yet real wisdom, is it? Real wisdom comes through knowing your heart, your mind, and letting go of the causes of suffering, greed, anger, delusion. That's wisdom. Any part of the practice that helps you achieve that is going to make you wiser. The last question is in Thai. Maybe I'll answer it in English first and then in Thai. So, when we practice equanimity and we don't want to listen to other people's problems, does that mean we've lost our metta? So I think this is a question about how equanimity and metta work together. So, in terms of relating to other people, of course, sometimes we have to know our limits, what we can take on in terms of listening to other people's problems. Depends who the person is, whether there's someone very close that we maybe responsible for, like a child, or someone we are close to, like a relative, like a parent or a partner, or if it's someone further away. Sometimes we need to know our immediate level of responsibility, and so some people we can't turn our back on. Say a kid, you can't. You just have to listen and help because they're a child. But maybe somebody who's not an immediate family member, you may sometimes know your limit and say, "Oh, I'm tired. I need to rest myself. I can't take on other people's problems at the moment." Or you're ill, or you have your own problems sometimes, and you need to focus on them more than listening to others. So you have to consider your situation and then other people, who they are and how much you can take on. So this is the practice of equanimity. Sometimes you have to know that there's nothing much I can do to help them, so for now I'll just leave it. I wish them well, but there's nothing I can do, and you recognize that. So you go to equanimity. The Buddha said the danger of equanimity is when we're not fully aware and wise in the situation, is it can turn into indifference. We just don't care. So you have to reflect on that, don't you? As you practice equanimity, you reflect on karma, you reflect on your own position, how much knowledge and skill you have to help others, and you have to be honest. So if you've thought it through and there's some person around you that is suffering, but honestly you realize there's nothing you can do to help, well, you can practice equanimity maybe. You wish them well, but there's nothing you can do. But you have to check that you're not just being indifferent, because sometimes it's just we don't care. It's maybe coming from a bit of aversion as well, or just a cold indifference. This is one of the dangers that equanimity can go into that. And so metta balances that out. So we practice metta, goodwill for all beings, it's a basic attitude, but it's balanced and modified by equanimity, because sometimes there's not much you can do to help. The danger with metta is that we sometimes get too attached to people out of our friendliness, our love, our concern, then we get too attached, and then that can be overwhelming for us. And because we're so attached to someone, they're suffering, and then we can't sleep at night. We're so worried about their suffering, and we can't function so well because we're so caught up with our attachment. The other danger of metta is we fall in love with them. We get so attached to them, we fall in love. It's one you hear this sometimes with Buddhist monastics. They've fallen in love with someone and they want to return to the lay life, and they say, "Oh, I've got to go and help this person." You got to go help them, and they're helping you out of the robes. It happens. Sometimes we get so attached that we lose all sight of reality. We can't look after our mind, can't control our mind because we're so attached. So that's the danger with metta. The danger with equanimity is being too cold or indifferent, and you have to reflect and see what's going on in your mind in the situation. And know your limit. If your battery is drained, well, you have to go off and recharge your battery, and maybe that does mean you have to stop listening to other people's problems. But sometimes it's just aversion, isn't it? We kind of become a bit more self-centered, and maybe we just sort of looking down on the person. Sometimes you're out of conceit. Maybe you're feeling you understand Buddhism, you practice well, someone else has a problem, but instead of responding with compassion, maybe we look down on them, can't be bothered, think we're better than them or something. So you have to observe yourself in the situation, see what defilements are coming up, and then try to make a good decision. I'll just speak in Thai now. มีปัญหาว่ากราบนมัสการข้าหลวงพ่อขอกราบเรียนถามว่าการที่เราวางเฉยไม่อยากรับฟังปัญหาของคนอื่นเราขาดความเมตตาไหมคะก็แล้วแต่เราต้องพิจารณาวางเฉยมากๆอาจจะเกิดจากไม่แคร์โทสะก็ได้อาจจะถือตัวถือตนก็ได้แต่ถ้าเราพิจารณาแล้วบางทีเรารู้คนนี้เราช่วยไม่ได้เราอาจจะเคยช่วยแล้วไม่ได้ผลหรือในขณะนี้ ในเรื่องนี้เราไม่สามารถที่จะช่วยเขาได้ก็เลยอาจจะต้องวางเฉยบางครั้งเราวางใจเป็นกลางวางเป็นอุเบกขาพิจารณากฎแห่งกรรมว่าคนนี้กำลังรับผลกรรมกำลังทุกข์แต่ว่าเราช่วยไม่ได้เราไม่สามารถที่จะช่วยบางทีเรามีเวลาน้อยมีกำลังน้อยบางทีเราต้องช่วยตัวเองก่อนหรือบางทีเรามีข้ออื่นที่เราต้องช่วยเช่นเราอาจจะมีครอบครัวบางทีคนที่ไม่ใช่ญาติเขามีปัญหาแต่เราต้องช่วยครอบครัวของเราไปก่อนเพราะเป็นหน้าที่ของเราส่วนคนอื่นอาจจะไม่ได้เป็นความรับผิดชอบของเราถ้าเราพร้อมเราช่วยได้ก็ดีแต่บางทีเราไม่พร้อมหรือปัญหาเขามันมากเกินที่เราจะช่วยได้เราต้องพิจารณาแต่เป็นความเป็นไปได้บางครั้งเราวางเฉยเราเฉยเกินไปก็เป็นไปได้เราอาจจะขี้เหนียวไม่อยากเป็นเวลาเป็นความรู้ให้เขาไม่มีความอบอุ่นให้เขาก็เป็นไปได้ให้เราตรวจดูในเหตุการณ์บางครั้งเราก็ต้องบังคับตัวเองไปช่วยเขาถ้าเราพร้อมเราช่วยเขาได้ก็เราไปช่วยก่อนถึงเราเหนื่อยก็ไม่เป็นไรไปช่วยไปก่อนถ้าเราพร้อมส่วนเมตตาเราก็ต้องระวังเหมือนกันเพราะว่าบางทีเมตตาก็ทำให้เราหลงรักเกินไปยึดติดมากขึ้นไปกับคนนั้นเช่นที่เล่าเมื่อกี้นี้ภาษาอังกฤษบางที่พระรักญาติโยมเมตตาญาติโยมจนกระทั่งสึกไปช่วยใกล้ชิด เมตตาเปลี่ยนเป็นความรักเปลี่ยนเป็นอุปทานได้หรือบางทีเรารักคนนี้เมตตาคนนี้จนกระทั่งเขาเป็นอะไรนิดๆหน่อยๆเราก็ทุกข์ทันทีแล้วความคิดของเราเศร้าหมองเป็นกิเลสขึ้นมาเพราะความยึดติดเมตตามากขึ้นไปก็เรียกเมตตาอวิชชาหรือบางทีเมตตาคนนี้ทำให้เราเกลียดอีกคนหนึ่งบางทีคนนี้มีปัญหากับอีกคนหนึ่งแกล้งเขาเราก็เลยไปทำบาปกับคนที่สองเพราะเรารักคนที่หนึ่งก็ไปทำลายคนที่สองเพราะเรารักคนที่หนึ่งก็ไม่ถูกเหมือนกันก็เลยต้องระวังเมตตาเราต้องพิจารณาเหมือนกันให้มีปัญญาประกอบไปด้วยว่าเราควรจะเมตตามากน้อยแค่ไหนแล้วเมตตาไม่ให้ยึดติดมากเกินไปจนหลงอุเบกขากับเมตตาก็ช่วยบาลานซ์กันให้พอดี So those are the questions for tonight. If there's been anything useful there for you, that's good. And we'll see you next time and wish you well in your Dhamma practice.